we look at a map of aging, there are a few different paths that aging can take. Normal aging, mild difficulties, and significant difficulties. In medical lingo, this is normal aging, mild cognitive impairment or MCI, and dementia. Now, we anticipate to see changes in physical, sensory, and cognitive functioning with age. So things like hearing, vision, and mobility do tend to decline, and our sleep can become more shorter or more fragmented too. Cognitively, we expect certain abilities to stay relatively stable or at least be more resilient to change, especially things that psychologists call crystallized intelligence, which is exactly what it sounds like. Information like facts and words that we know and that have solidified in our minds over the years. Things like our vocabulary and simpler cognitive processes, like our ability to focus our attention on a conversation or to do basic math. These are thought to remain relatively stable. In terms of our memory, our autobiographical memories of long ago in childhood or young adulthood tend to stick with us pretty well. And these are the most resistant to change. So in general, the longer ago, the better. That said, we do generally see changes in thinking even among healthy aging adults. And these actually start changing at different times in our lives. These things include more complex thinking abilities. So we find it more challenging to multitask, and our speed of thinking or processing information tends to slow down. And we find that it takes a bit longer to learn new things. So instead of watching a YouTube video on how to use an app just once, it may take a few times of watching it and some more practice. We may also find that it's harder to think outside the box when we have to be creative, and our recent memory may be less sharp. So instead of recalling all of the details of a recent conversation, we may just remember the gist. In fact, some of these abilities start changing way before we even start thinking about aging. Processing speed actually peaks in early adulthood and then starts to decline after that. Also, that gosh darn tip of the tongue experience that we all get, well, I'm sorry to say, it does tend to increase from middle age onward. And it tends to happen especially on proper names. So people, places, movies, and so on. Don't believe me? Have you ever played the game where you name a movie and someone has to name all the actors? You may find that you can picture the actor, you can say what else they're in, but that name, it's right there, so close it feels like it'll drive you crazy. And if you could just hear it, you'd recognize it immediately. That's the experience I'm talking about. Overall, aging affects how efficiently we process information, especially if it's complex. So things like quickly coming up with words, our reaction time, quickly multitasking, and even how much information we can take in and learn at a time may change. But we are still able to do these things well enough to continue taking care of our day-to-day tasks. So we just may feel that things, especially like new processes or new information, especially if it's complex, may take a bit longer, or that we don't pick things up quite like we used to. So how much change is normal? Well, that's a good question. And like most answers to most good questions, it depends. It actually depends on a lot of things. So there's research that suggests that the healthier the actual brain is, the more brain reserve we have, meaning that the brain cells are actually functioning relatively well, so that age or disease may have less of an effect on our functioning. Also, having cognitive reserve, which you build up through a life of cognitively enriching and stimulating activities, things like education, learning experiences, and overcoming challenges, this can help us to adapt to changes and give us and our brain a bit of a buffer, so that when difficulties arise, we are able to work around them easier. Since it's so complex, it's not surprising that there's such a big range of functioning, especially as we age. So what is considered average functioning, meaning right where we expect for a group of individuals to be functioning, or where most individuals in a certain age group are functioning, depends on the group that you're looking at. So when a 40-year-old has average memory for their age, that's in comparison to other 40-year-olds, and then 20 years later has average memory for their age, that doesn't mean that they haven't necessarily had any changes in their memory. It just means that the amount of changes they are having are at a level that is considered normal or within expectation, presuming that they've kind of always had average memory. Now, this is why it can be so helpful to learn general adaptive or helpful cognitive strategies that nearly everybody can benefit from, which, of course, we'll cover in future videos. So, even if we are healthy aging, we often can see some changes in how efficiently our brain is functioning. So, to optimize our functioning, we can start using strategies now. Additionally, research consistently shows that what we do in terms of our lifestyle, it matters in terms of keeping our brain healthy. Recent research shows that up to 40% of dementias are either preventable or delayable by making healthier lifestyle habits. So it's never too early and never too late to live a brain healthy lifestyle. So be sure to check out the brain healthy modules and videos to learn how. So, what happens when those changes someone experiences as they age become more pronounced than what we consider to be normal or typical? Well, that's when certain diagnoses come up. So things like mild cognitive impairment, also called MCI, or dementia. There are separate modules and videos on these specifically, so check out those for more information.